This is the Red Newt Cellars tasting for today. We're going to be tasting Merlot, our 2008 and 2012 Merlots. And I'm going to stop trying to tell you where people are but I'll tell you who's here. Rebecca, our brand ambassador, is here to taste with us. Heather, our front of house manager, social media coordinator. Megs, our assistant winemaker, and Kelby, winemaker. So with that, it's wine time. And I think should we start with the 2010 or 2012?
You have 10 or 8? I think I have 8.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's not the 10. It's the 8. 2008. Well, let's start with the 2012. Yeah. So, I was thinking to myself earlier today how different the 2010 and 2012 vintages were, but I need to think about how different the 2008 and 2012 vintages were. Yeah, okay. Oh, and we have another guest joins us, Miguel. Hello, Miguel.
Hello.
Can you hear us? Hi.
Miguel.
Hi, Miguel.
How's it going? I was just in a little bit of a mute session with some people, but how's it going, guys?
Terrific. Hey, everybody, I think we're live, and we have our special guest, Miguel de Leon from Pinch Chinese in New York. He's going to be tasting with us today. How exciting.
Hi.
So how are things going at the restaurant?
As you can see, it's lively behind me.
Yeah.
Normally this room would be filled with about 60 or so people, and right now it's just me and the chefs and a couple bottles of wine. You might hear the phone go off every once in a while, and I apologize if that happens, but we're doing takeout today, so that's what we pivoted to. Speaking of that.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
A couple more dinners, hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah, so, otherwise we're doing okay. So yeah, we've turned our front area where the bar usually is into a makeshift wine shop. And then the rest of it is just kind of active storage. We're also helping hospitals and ICUs get fed. Been doing kind of like drop-offs for hospitals and MICUs this past week. We started with 3, and then we're hoping to do a lot more the next couple weeks. So if you know anybody who needs a hot meal, or even if you just know any kind of, whether or not they're hospital workers or emergency workers, if you're hungry and you need somewhere to go, we've got some food for you. So
that's wonderful. Very generous. Yeah. All right. So we're tasting the 2008 and 2012 Merlot today, and both have been around a little while, and it's going to be neither one of the the 2012 I've been drinking lately because that's our current release of Merlot. The 2008 I haven't had in quite a while, so I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. So 2012 was your first vintage at Red Newt, Kelby?
That it was. It was the easiest vintage we've had as well. Or since I've been there. It was just really beautiful ripening weather through the season. Really, I've always joked you could have planned when you wanted to pick about 2 months in advance and it would have verified. It was unbelievable. It's probably the only harvest in my life that I'll still be able to get up and drive the 2 hours on Tuesday evenings to go to choir rehearsal every week without missing it in the evenings. But pretty warm year, pretty even growing season, and my first time working with any of this fruit and seeing, I often don't think of Merlot and the Finger Lakes necessarily. That's not my go-to red grape. So that was a bit of a learning curve for me coming to Red Newt and seeing just the spectacular fruit that we get to work with here.
Has Red Newt always had Merlot?
I believe so. Yeah, we've sourced Merlot from 2 different growers. Both of the I think both of these are from Sawmill Creek Vineyards. I know that 2008 is, and I think most of the 2012, either Sawmill Creek or a blend of Sawmill Creek and Glacier Ridge, and I don't recall it at the exact moment. But yeah, we've worked with both Sawmill Creek on the home farm, which is the 2008, and then Jim had another vineyard south of here, right just north of Hector Falls. It was really spectacular. It's like the Hoffman Vineyard, and it was about 3 or 4 acres, and it was literally a stone's throw from the water. A steep slope, and if you went to the bottom row, great, it had a good arm. You could chuck a stone over the cottages, make sure you have a good arm, and into the lake. You want to talk a little bit about maybe just this sort of winemaking of this wine, but reds in general at Red Newt?
Yeah. Everything for us comes in and goes into 1-ton bins, or approximate 1-ton bins, usually with some stem inclusion, depending on the year. Would have been a little more in 2012 because it was such a ripe year. Everything gets punched down by hand using an old wooden punch down tool, although we now have a new wooden punch down tool is an option. And it's really quite simple winemaking, I have to say. It's punch downs, ferments go, the MLs go, pressed off, and then barreled down. This would have been probably leaned a little bit more into American oak, but probably older American oak. I feel like we probably went with the Glacier Ridge from 2012, went into the newer barrels that year. And then bottled up the year later. And we tasted this a few times over the last couple of years to decide when to release it, because it was pretty shut down, pretty reductive for a while, and not in an unattractive way, but it's really just opened up beautifully in the last, I would say, 6 months in particular.
Uh-huh.
Now, were you the head winemaker on this vintage, Kelby, or were you working with Dave in the cellar?
No, I was working with Dave.
Okay. So both the 8 and were made by Dave. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was in the cellar. I was leading the cellar there. Kelby was we were working along together. And in 2013, I think we said this in one of our past ones, Kelby took over the lead in the cellar, though I was still in the cellar pretty much full time, the 2013 vintage. But that was the last vintage I've spent any substantial time in the cellar, hardest time, in 2013. So this was kind of the first of a couple transitional years.
And not to put anyone on the spot, but thoughts on the wine?
It's holding up beautifully. It's gorgeous, gorgeous wine. It's still a baby. It's not near its zenith yet, in my opinion.
Yeah, if you're saying that it's just coming to age over the last 6 months, despite it being 2012,
Mm-hmm.
you've got a long way to go here. Maybe it's very easy to see maybe another 8 years on this thing, another 9, another 10. The oak is still really present, and I mean that in a really nice kind of, you can see the graduation kind of going there. But the fruit is still so intact. It's so dark and inky and delicious, and then bolstered by that really nice vanilla fruit on that oak.
Yeah, I think what really kind of strikes me too about this, the 12 Merlot, is that the acid is in no way out of balance, but you can tell there's a lot of freshness there, and there's a lot of longevity that's going to come with it.
This is a Merlot that I tell people, you're drinking it in the tasting room as a 2012. So most of you consider this an aged wine. I said, but for us, this is something that we're just starting to think about drinking. And it's a wine that I love. For anybody that comes in that tells me they're vegetarian or they're vegan, I say, and they want a red wine, I say, try the 2012 Merlot, because it does a really beautiful job with a lot of vegetarian and vegan options.
Yeah, Miguel, you serve this at your restaurant. Well, you serve a Merlot at your restaurant. And when I first, I think Kelby said, oh, Miguel's joining us to taste Merlot, because he's a really great supporter of a Merlot in his restaurant, this Chinese restaurant. And I said, oh, okay. That's not what one leaps into one mind, is a real featured wine that you'd be behind with your kind of cuisine.
Yeah. So for the 3 years that we've been open, our entire by the glass selection has only just been Merlot or Merlot dominant blends.
Wow.
And we don't really advertise it as such. You know, you just end up drinking Merlot because that's what we have. And so if you tell me that you like Pinot Noir, I'll pour you a lighter style Merlot. You tell me you like Cabernet, I'll pour you kind of like a big boy style Merlot. I think Merlot, along with say Chenin and Riesling are part of that family of grapes that are really sensitive to where they're from and who's making them. And those kinds of signatures are really, really key to making people understand that Merlot, I mean, despite the movie coming out 15 years ago, we're still seeing ramifications of it. I mean, I don't know how often you guys see in your tasting room someone saying, I actually don't like Merlot, when they've never had one. Either that or they've never had something that was actually, produced and made with such care. We're talking about stuff from, it's one of the first things that we learn as people in wine, right? We learn about Bordeaux and Burgundy kind of first to establish our circles, kind of to kind of get our bearings straight in terms of tasting red wine or what have you. Like, to me, classic red wine tastes like Bordeaux, and especially Merlot. And so we can kind of go from there in terms of how we approach not just the menu, but I mean, kind of building the rest of our wine list that way. So we have about 30 to 35 Merlots on the wine list at any given point. And then we kind of bolster that with about another 60 or so red wines that span the range. So whether or not they're glue style reds, or if they're, Rhone style Syrahs, Merlot, it kind of fits in that middle category of everything. And we know that we can showcase that range, and not just in kind of like classic versus like modern, but even in a range of, say, like natural, or more focused towards, say, the Bordelaise style, or maybe even in this like modern winemaking sense, or like how we would consider the I guess like the Parker afterbirth of like of American winemaking. Those are represented on the menu also. But I wanted to show like a depth and breadth of what Merlot is capable of, and especially against Chinese food, it's a fun journey for a lot of people.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely get people that come to the tasting room and are biased against Merlot before they've had it, which we're very comfortable with, because most people come into the tasting room and say that they don't like Riesling because it's sweet. So we're just well primed for these conversations.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you guys might see something similar with, say, like Cab Franc too, where these are touch points for the region. But I think it's interesting to see people speak about Merlot in a way that's different and exciting. It absolutely is. And when we're talking about this kind of ageability, we're talking about this kind, and we're talking about this kind of value, which is what people really seem to not get with Merlot. Is that it's great bang for its buck for whatever you're drinking.
Heather, do you know,
Right.
top of your head, how much is the 12 Merlot?
2012 Merlot is $22.50 a bottle.
You see, like that's so affordable, and it's so great for a wine like this that you can keep in your cellar for a long time. Like, get a case and then see how it changes every 5-10 years. I think that's such a great value for a wine like that. It's so exciting too, is that like the signature of the place really carries through, and I think that's what's really key about Merlot, is that terroir-wise, it's such a sponge, and especially for, say, Finger Lakes wine, where we're seeing a lot of wine on shale, or like wine on things that we never would expect as like classic winemaking terroirs. I think that there's a really compelling way that we get something out of Merlot that's very classically New York. And there's only a couple places that can actually support Merlot winemaking, I think, well. Like, I think parts of where you are, especially, I think like the expressions that you guys have of Glacier Ridge are like exceptional for Merlot. And then there's some pockets out in Long Island that I think just do it well, considering they're on the same parallel for Bordeaux. But it's different when you get that kind of attention to wine like this. So well done, kudos.
All right, thank you. Okay, well, how about that 2008?
And I want to try.
So I grabbed the wrong glass. I had the '08 first, and I'm just getting to the 2012. So while everybody's acclimating, smelling, and initially tasting, I'll just tell you right now, the '08, I love the fact that it's really beautiful secondary characteristics, which were all the ones that Megs was talking about with Rieslings. Those are some of my favorite notes when it comes to Merlot as it's been aging, is getting into those secondary notes where you're getting a lot of flavor in real subtle layers, but you've still got all that richness that you're looking for from a big red. And we're accomplishing that with our everyday label Merlot, which I think is really kind of not something you always see.
Yeah.
The almost reads sweeter on the 08.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Yeah. '08 was, I mean, 2012 was one of the, in 2012 was probably one of the warmest, ripest vintages of the decade. 2008 was, more moderate, more typical than 12 was. And boy, this 8 has so delicate with these, sort of top notes of a little bit of cedar, but violet and sort of red, dark berry fruit, and exquisitely youthful and elegantly aged at the same time.
Yeah, it's in a really interesting point in its life.
Yeah.
It has that like juicy potpourri quality. Blackberry juice and all of this potpourri kind of qualities to it, which are really, really interesting, considering how it also almost leans on that like almost beefy quality that Merlot can get when it has a significant amount of time.
Yeah, and I'm recollecting now that I'm quite certain this was from that Hoffman site that I told you about. And I did just sort of serendipitously check, and the 2012 is about 80% Hazlitt, Sawmill Creek Vineyards, and about 20% of the Glacier Ridge in that blend.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think one of the things I love about Merlot, and not just ours, but like really good quality Merlots that I've tasted from around the world, is that to me, they always have a very distinctive little bit of like a menthol quality to them. And there's just something about that that's just so alluring and really just pulls me into the wine. And I love that I'm seeing a lot of that in this '08 Merlot, in addition to more of those like baking spices, so that nutmeg and cinnamon quality.
Yeah, to me, it's that mentholated quality like reads as cardamom. And when you have a really delicious, I think that integration with oak and also kind of a little bit of that, it really just needs time. Merlot can get really, really beautiful in that way, in that like almost incense quality for the perfume, which is really interesting. There's only a few grapes that can do that well, and Merlot is one of them.
Yeah, I mean, '08, I would say is probably the sleeper, or at the time was the sleeper vintage. Because I think people thought it was good, but didn't realize how good it was going to be. It kind of, it fell, historically here, it fell after the '07 vintage, which was, quite ballyhooed. It was, the really big, warm, epic vintage. Not maybe the best for Riesling, but, everyone loved it for reds. But generally speaking, for aging, the 08 reds, I mean, the 08 Rieslings are just spectacular. They're truly dynamite wines. But the 08 reds as well are just such an elegant aging curve on them, right? Like they've had a chance to naturally come into their own. There's no part that's ever been out of joint in the aging curve. And I think, was that maybe the vintage you would have had of the Glacier Ridge at one time at Pinch? I think 08 was one of the ones.
Yeah, 08. We've had a couple vintages of Glacier Ridge on the menu. We started with, I think, 06. And then 08. And then we graduated back into kind of going back and forth between this label and the Glacier Ridge bottlings. But we have 12 currently. And I think we're on our last bottle, so we're doing okay.
How much of this was made? How much did you make of the '08 Merlot?
Not too much. I don't remember. A couple hundred cases. Most of that era, our Merlot production was relatively small.
And how much are you making now? Like, how much was the 12 vintage?
Oh, I don't know, a couple hundred cases. How much? We don't make a ton of, we make more than a ton of Merlot. We don't make a tremendous amount of these wines. How much the, I can tell you. Yeah, I can just glance over here slyly, and I can tell you the 12 we made 368 cases of.
And I mean, just the point on Merlot production is that it is, again, one of my favorite wines that we make. And as Miguel said, gets a bad rap just because that it's Merlot and people are biased against it. But at Glacier Ridge in particular, we've had more Merlot planted, Cabernet Franc, and Pinot Noir as well. So there's going to be a lot to look forward to moving into future vintages.
That's great.
Yeah, that '08 Merlot, we only made about 120 cases.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Oh,
you should keep a lot of it. It's very good. It's delicious. It's absolutely delicious, and it's in such a happy place right now.
Yeah, I think it's all getting moved into my personal cellar tomorrow.
Yeah, it's not hard to like, and I think that's the thing that people forget about Merlot. Like it's such a friendly grape, and it's such a friendly wine to drink. You know, continuing to drink it and continuing to see it against cuisine and like seeing it with other guests. It's like they're always somewhat surprised whenever we serve them Merlot, especially styles like this that have a little bit of time, a little bit of space. You know, I think collectively like 12 was an okay vintage for a lot of people, and Bordeaux especially. But it's nice to see kind of everywhere else where that kind of heat spike looked in terms of the signature for everyone else. And I think that's really exciting to see also, considering for a wine that's, 8 years young, it reads like it was made 2 years ago. Like everything seems so compact. Even though it was like a difficult vintage in Bordeaux, it was like, I think it was a stellar in New York, no? And I think it was also the same in California. It was like a lot of people were really, really excited to see Merlot made this way. Yeah, I think for the forthcoming, well, I guess in this apocalypse that we're in, like Merlot's a really nice salve.
Yeah.
And just as a quick point for everybody out there who's been watching, and I've seen some results from people watching our videos, and we've had a lot of like 2009 semi-dry Riesling going out the door. There's not that much '08 Merlot, so if you guys do like it and you do want to get a case of it to see how it evolves over the years, do it now.
Very good. It's very, very good.
Yeah. So we usually kind of wrap things up talking about food. And so maybe we'll start with the restaurant tour. So
Sure.
we usually wrap up and say, well, what are you thinking of having tonight with dinner? Because we all have, a couple bottles of wine sitting here with our dinner. So how about you, Miguel?
Well, a personal favorite of mine with Merlot is pork. I think any sort of pork dish, whether or not you deep fry a pork chop or you just put it on a cast iron, make sure that it gets a lot of garlic though. I think Merlot sings really, really well with pork. There's a general sweetness that the two really match well together. Another thing would be anything that you would douse black pepper with. So eggs, which is like eggs and cheese and a lot of black pepper. This is your best friend. Merlot does so well with simple preparations. And then the last thing, people think that vegetables are challenging, but like you were saying earlier, Heather, like this is great vegetable wine. So, it's asparagus season. There's also plenty of bell peppers around, and kind of anything that you would put a lot of alliums with. So onions, chives, shallots. Those things are really, really great friends to Merlot. They kind of fill in the Cabernet of the blend, right? So you get all of that fun stuff in food, and then you don't need the cab. You just have the Merlot instead. So the simpler the preparation, the better. And don't be afraid to do some more delicate stuff with Merlot, because Merlot can handle it. So I'm saying white fish, maybe with a little bit of butter and a lot of garlic. That's very delicious with Merlot. And then even a very simple preparation of, say, like, salad greens dressed with just a little bit of something bitter, like grapefruit. I think that would be really, really lovely with something like this. So I would recommend.
How about you, Rebecca? What do you have on the docket for dinner tonight?
Well, Miguel has me thinking differently now. I'm going to do a kind of a salad with roasted cauliflower, dried cherries, some cured olives, some feta, some garbanzo beans, and I'm not really sure if I was even going to bother with a protein with that, just because I just wanted something a little bit cleaner tonight. And I think the Merlot, the 08 that I'm having right now, the dried cherries and that whipped feta, I think would be really beautiful. Yeah. Just like a decomposed salad.
Sounds great. How about you, Megs?
So I have decided to support my local restaurant, one of my local restaurants that I love going to. So I actually got some food earlier from Hazelnut Kitchen. So I've got a charcuterie board with some mustard, some pretzel bread, some cheeses, and I actually did get pork loin with apple butter. So right there with you, Miguel. And some pickled veg, some greens with like a lemon poppy seed dressing. So I am perfectly poised for Merlot this evening.
That's great. How about you, Kelby?
I'm on a similar wavelength as Meg's in supporting the local restaurant here. We've ordered from Thai by Night, which is the spectacular Thai restaurant just 20 minutes away from us here in Canandaigua. And I called them up, and they sell out every day for their takeout this right now. So I just told them to put together whatever was good. And we're getting some spicy pork bone soup and some braised pork spare ribs, and there's a bunch of fried eggs on it because they asked if I wanted to put fried eggs on anything, and I said, anything you think it should go on, please put the fried eggs on. Like, that sounds great to me. So we're really looking forward to that meal, giving them some love.
Supporting them. I love them.
Yeah. And I think it'd be worth having Miguel chime in on supporting local restaurants right now, because super important, and something that earlier this week we stopped by a spot and picked up a takeout order, and we tipped like we normally would tip, 20 or 25%, and they were just floored that they thought it was a mistake. And I think you had a good Twitter thread earlier this week about well, I mean, now's not the time to skimp.
No, not at all. I will say this: if you can still afford to do any sort of delivery service, or even just like pickup service at your local restaurant, tip like you would normally tip. Because for the most part, those tips are going straight back to that staff who just got laid off. So, as much as we can, let's try and be decent human beings to each other. And then the second part of that is that, as trying as this all seems, we all still want to practice hospitality in the right way. And that's why I wanted to tell you guys about the hospital partnerships that we've been doing. But there's a lot of other people who are food insecure in times like these. And I think one of the easiest ways for us to kind of get the right kind of food to the right kind of people would be to just support your local restaurants. We're also trying our darndest to make sure that everybody is staying fed and staying happy and staying, so that we can, open up maybe 2-3 months from now and see what's going on with the rest of the world, and make sure that everyone else can come back to something that's joyful and happy and restorative for the rest of us. So thank you guys for giving me a little bit of a platform here, but go to your local restaurant. They would love to see your face. And now that a little bit of the liquor laws are more lax, buy a bottle of wine. There's nothing wrong with you enjoying a great bottle of wine with your meal, even if it's breakfast, especially if it's lunch, but mostly if it's dinner time.
Right. What do you have on the dinner plans for tonight, Heather?
Well, tonight, actually, since I know that we're going to be having my cousin's lamb shanks tomorrow for Easter, tonight I decided we're going asparagus, red cabbage, I have some green beans, and I have some shiitake mushrooms. So I'm going to do a modified stir fry. I like mine slightly crunchy, but just enough kind of wilt on them to handle a little bit of kale as well that I'm going to throw in there. And then Merlot, and I'm going to shave on top some Finger Lakes Gold Reserve. So Finger Lakes Gold, FLX Gold, is made from Fox Run, Lively Run dairy. It's the goat dairy up in Interlaken. And their FLX Gold is an aged goat's milk. And then the Reserve is a special elite of that just took an ACS winner this year in Philadelphia. And so I'm going to shave that on top with a little goat cheese on there.
All right. So I started backwards today. Maybe it's forwards. I'm not quite sure. But it's a beautiful, it's clear, sunny day today here in Ithaca. And about 45, maybe 50 degrees, and it's sunny. So I'm going to fire up the Primo grill. And then that was the first thing. Then I had to think of what to put on it. So I did find a nice portion of beef tenderloin in the freezer. And I said, oh, okay, I can thaw that out. And I do have a little bacon stashed away. And I said, oh, I can wrap that around it. And I don't have any potatoes. I did make up a little polenta this afternoon, a little firm polenta, and spread it on a sheet tray so I can cut that up and throw it on the grill with maybe some sliced up carrot spears and asparagus, and maybe drizzle everything with a little bit of a balsamic glaze, and that's where I'm at.
Beautiful.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Everyone's
So
going to be
really
eating well.
I was a little hungry when I started, and now after hearing all of us talk, I'm really hungry. So we better wrap this up and get cooking. But thank you all out there, and thank you Rebecca and Heather and Megs and Kelby and especially Miguel. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Good luck. Keep on going there and keep on doing what you're doing. It's
Thank you.
really
Wine helped.
Yeah. All right. So good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Cheers, everybody.